informational and educational episode set for you this time, where you're going to find that at some point in your life, and especially in the solitaires, ladies, those engagement rings, who knows, a couple decades pass before you know it. And what happens? Your prongs get worn. And we're going to show you in this episode exactly how a prong is restored before it ends up broken, and then before you lose that precious stone that it was holding in. Today, what we have is a beautiful blue sapphire solitaire. And what you'll see is 6 prongs. Well, 5 of them are beautiful and like brand new. But the prong that was worn to the outside all those years, it is worn thin. And at that point, that's when it becomes dangerous, when it gets sharp and can snag, and that's when it can also break, endangering the loss of the stone. So, in order to fix that, what we do is we add solder to the top of it to restore the height, to make it look like the newness of the others that you'll see in the beautiful 6 prongs. If it's 4 prongs, keep this in mind, it becomes extremely highly likely you will lose the stone with only 1 prong missing. So it becomes that important. And in order to do that, what we do, we add the correct type of solder to the top of the prong. And what we do, we flow it and melt it down on there. And that's what you're going to get to see today. All that's needed in today's project is the solder. And I have brought out 2 pieces to show you, and for an example, the differences, because there's solder made for every carat, and for every carat, 14 karat, 18 karat, in between you have 3 different grades of temperature melt. And you'll see on this yellow gold piece of solder that they're marked so that we know what is what. And with those letters, it tells me that it's a 14 karat solder, that it's yellow gold, and the ultra means that it is the lowest temperature flowing solder needed for chains most often. All right, now the one we're going to be using today though is a white gold solder, because the head is white gold, it's 14 karat, and you'll see, so we have 14 karat, W for white, the E. Easy flow. Easy flow is a higher temperature melting solder that is a harder solder, perfect for a prong. The grade of solder above that is the grade that is used for sizing a ring. So for the sapphire, we're not going to worry. We already know that the sapphire, by the way, in case you were wondering, is already heat treated. If it was a non-heat treated stone, then we wouldn't be fixing it in this manner. So let's get to work and show you exactly what is done next. At the bench here, we have our solitaire. We have it in the tweezers locked up mighty tight, because we're going to dip it in a chemical. This chemical is a chemical that will prevent oxidation when we apply heat to those prongs. And it's a magically working. So we're going to get this into the bench tweezers and ready for the next step. Now that we have it firmly secured, we have the chemical on the ring, we're going to take our solder pick and apply the heat from the torch, and watch this. We ball up the solder. That's about 1300 degrees you just saw happen. The pick is made for the solder to kind of adhere to it in an odd way. And I've chosen this size piece. I have cut 3 pieces of solder. So I'm going to start with this and see if it doesn't give me the size I'm looking for, so it matches the other. Now, you notice that with a little heat, it just dropped off the end of the solder pick. And we apply heat slowly to the prong until you see it flow just kind of magically on there. Now, I might have made that look easy, but you're talking about 40 years of experience. Okay, so let this naturally cool. And that's important with gemstones. It's amazing that you can actually apply heat to rubies and sapphires, but you can. They can take actually much more heat when they're being heat treated than what you saw right there. But one thing that they can't is a heat change that's quick. So diamonds can. They're the only thing they can. So we're going to let that cool, and then we're going to put it in the chemical to remove the chemicals. And then we'll be back and show you what's next. All right, so what we're going to do is put it in the pickle pot, and it's a specific chemical that will, and of course they make a specific pickle pot that will cost about 20 times the cost of a good old-fashioned crock pot that you see here. And it'll take a few seconds, but what it does is it removes the other chemicals that the heat actually will bake onto the piece. So it's more than a few second process, but we'll let that occur and steam it off, and you'll see me back at the bench. What we have is the ring where we've added the solder bead to it. Now you can see from the outside that there is a little line you can see between the new solder and the original prong. That's the area we need to work on to file with our wheel and make it blend together. So let's do that now. We have a wheel that will not scratch the sapphire. Very important. And we go around all sides, making sure that where the solder contacts the original prong, that area, that meat, is smoothed out to where there's not a seam, or as close as possible to that goal. By removing all the old rhodium, it allows new rhodium to make contact at the same rate and look the same in the finish of it. All right, so I think we have achieved our goal with a little extra rouge and dirt on the piece. Means that we're going to finish the polish now with a brush and go over the outside, and then we're done. I always like to do most of my polishing at the bench. I have more control there and very little at the buffer. So you'll see me dip the brush into a polishing compound that still will remove scratches. It's not the highest polish that I'm going to do yet. So as you see me, I am going around all the prongs so that, again, they're going to look even to the one I worked on. Okay, so we hit the top of the piece. Again, you can't do that with that polishing compound on stones of a hardness of 5 or less. It would actually scratch it. But sapphire being a hardness of 9, no problem. All right, let's take it to the buffer now, and then to the rhodium plater. The final finish is what we refer to as a red rouge. Why? Because it's red. So we've applied it to the wheel. This is only a couple second ordeal. What we're doing is just barely going over the top of the piece and giving it that final bright glass finish that is so well liked. Doesn't always end up to be that permanent, but at least to start with, it is shiny and beautiful. And with that, it is complete. Look at that sparkle. That prong restored to its original beauty. Let's go ahead and rhodium plate it. And that's done with a very expensive machine that you can control the amps and volts. As you can see it bubbling away, that means that rhodium is coming out of solution and turning into a metal on the surface of the ring. Rhodium being a platinum group metal, making it whiter and harder. And it very effective for white gold to make it look like the look of platinum. All right, that, wow, you can visibly see the much brighter, whiter look to it. And it gives it a good, hard, glassy type of look and finish. Let's rinse it off and then steam it, and it's done. All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have just completed what is referred to as rebuilding or restoring an existing prong. Something that's very important to do in a foresight manner instead of a hindsight manner. Because if you don't, what can happen? It can get worn, then sharp, then break. And if it breaks off, that is one less prong you have for security. And you know what that can lead to. Yes, the loss of your precious, precious gem. So I hope you have enjoyed and learned something from today's episode of the How Do You series, where we should take you behind the bench and give you views and shots of something you've never seen before.